Okay, now I'm going to show some test shots I took. These are not scientific shots by any stretch. It's just me fooling around with the camera, trying different apertures and different subjects. There's a funny story that goes along with this. This picture looks pretty bad, right? Well, I had read about the lens beforehand, and the reviews are, fair for the lens, not amazing. And so I kind of expected it to not have that great a contrast and perhaps be a little soft wide open. And so I took it out in the backyard and took a few shots and thought to myself, wow, this lens really is low contrast and really isn't very sharp at 5.6. So, I was not all that impressed and kind of thinking, well, I guess that was a roll of the dice and I lost on this. As I was putting the lens cap back on the lens to put it away, I noticed that it had a filter on. And something about the look of the filter made me say to myself, maybe I should take that filter off and have a look at it. And so I did. And that filter was the nastiest, dirtiest filter you can imagine. It's almost like somebody had smoked and blew smoke on both sides of it. So I was basically shooting through a soft focus filter, even though it was a UV filter. So anyway, I put the lens back on the camera and put it back on the monopod and took some shots. So this is what it looked like with the bad filter on. This is at f5.6 and this is with the filter off. So this is much better, clearly. But this should give you a feel for what you can expect at f5.6. It's a little soft and there's some spherical aberration here and there. That's the glow kind of that shows up on things, particularly things that are bright. You see how there's a glow around that this piece of metal and so forth. Now, at web size, you probably wouldn't notice that sort of thing. So if you just want a big long lens to play around with and post some stuff up on Flickr at smaller sizes, you'd probably be perfectly happy at 5.6. But let me show you what f8 looks like. So this is shot at f8 and it's a lot crisper. You can see a lot of that spherical aberration is gone. Let me get these guys side by side. So again, f5.6 on the left, f8 on the right, and you can just see that it's much softer at 5.6 and pretty good at f8. You get it up here on this over here. I noticed this is pretty good. So pretty big difference. This, you can read it, but not that well here. You can read it easily, and kind of the same deal here. It's just softer at the wider aperture. So let's move on. This is just another demonstration of f5.6 versus f8. Now this taken on its own, as I said, at web sizes may not be too obvious that it's very soft, but at f8 you start to see the texture come out on this piece of metalwork here. So huge difference. Moving on, I went down to the park and took some bird shots. And this isn't very advanced nature shooting, but this is a pretty good demonstration of at f5.6 not only the spherical aberration, this glow I've been talking about, and the relative softness. You can also see what the bokeh looks like. So this other goose, that bokeh looks okay, but this bokeh with a lot of detail in it, that looks pretty nervous to me. So, I'd say the bokeh is just average, not something you're going to want to write home about or crow about on Flickr or whatever site you like to post photos to. So, subjects far in the distance will probably look fine when they're out of focus, but stuff closer to your subject, not so much. This is another one. This is half stop down at f6.3, and I was hoping that it would have a big difference in the performance of the lens, and it's a little better maybe, but still plenty of spherical aberration. You can see how there's almost just a haze over the photo, and this is 100% crop, by the way. Maybe the focus wasn't perfect, but I think the focus was probably fine, and what we're seeing here is just poor performance at wider apertures. Now this is at the same aperture, and you know, one nice thing, 400 millimeter lens can really pull stuff in. This guy was across the pond and up a hill and out on a bike trail, and so you know, he was far away, and it pulled him in really nicely. And I wanted to get this because of the color. The guy's in a red shirt and so forth with green background. Again, this is a 6.3, and the aberration in this is really obvious. Look at this glow around the edges and so forth. Now, I wasn't quick enough to stop down and take another shot of this, unfortunately. By the way, these photos, I might have just adjusted exposure a bit. I don't think I touched this one. Generally, I didn't touch sharpness. Mostly, I just fooled around with the exposure a little bit just to kind of equalize them. Next shot. Now, this is one of the first shots I stopped down to f8, and pretty big difference here. You can see a lot of texture coming out in this duck's feathers, and you can see some good texture here. He's not at the best angle to have this feather texture come out, but this looks pretty good. So on a, you know, a reasonable size print, this probably look just fine. And I'll point out that the bokeh looks a little better on this, but the background is a little more distant, and it's not as detailed because it's water in the background. But anyway, I think this is pretty acceptable results for a $150, $175 400 millimeter lens. Moving on now, I did some comparison shots of this same subject. I know it's riveting. I took this because it has all this detail in it, and it also has this background. So at f5.6, I think this bokeh looks pretty nice. But we, you know, go to 100% crop here. That's not looking so great. Again, I've said it a million times. Lots of spherical aberration. I mean, it's just kind of looks like there's a soft focus filter on, and I didn't have that nasty filter on either. So going to the next photo, I'm going to leave it zoomed in. This one is a stop or a half stop down at 6.3. Not a real, sorry about it jumping around, not a real huge difference. Maybe a little, but not much. Now at f8, we're getting real. This is pretty good. I think this looks pretty darn good. I have to point out, I stupidly had my auto ISO turned on when I took these shots, so I apologize for that. As I stop down, the ISO goes up, so there's a little more grain in the shots where I stop down more, but you can still see the detail. So let me get this side by side with the f5.6 shot and get these guys side by side. And I think you'll see, you know, it's just a huge difference. So as I said, this is basically an f8 lens. Moving on, I did go up to f10, and there wasn't an appreciable improvement in sharpness. I also shot at f13. I'm not going to bring that up, and it was essentially equivalent to f10, and it had more noise because the ISO went up because I'm an idiot and had auto ISO turned on. Let's see, let's zoom this back out, and you know, this bokeh looks okay. So, you know, it kind of depends on the distance of the out of focus subject as to how well this lens is going to handle rendering it. So just as an example, I wanted to show kind of how similar the performance is at sub f8 aperture. So this is 5.6, and this one is at 7.1, so it's just short of f8, and they're fairly close. We'll zoom in. This is the 5.6 one again, and this is the f8 one. There's still, I mean, not f8, f7.1. There's still a little bit of spherical aberration here. And interestingly, in this shot, I consider either of these to be pretty usable shots. I mean, if you thought this was a great subject. So there you have it. I would give this lens a rating of, it's all right, as long as you get it for a good price. Maybe you find it on Craigslist or eBay, and I feel like $150 isn't too much to pay for a long lens that admittedly requires you to stop down a bit or to use your results at web size and not on larger prints, or just avoid the pixel peeping, and you'll probably be pretty happy with it. One thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention while I was waving the lens around on camera is it's all metal construction, and I think I did mention it's about the size and the weight of a Canon 70-200 f4 IS lens. Now this lens doesn't have any image stabilization built in, but if you shoot Sony, you don't care. It's one thing I love about Sony bodies. They got built-in image stabilization, and to me that's the right way to do it. Then any lens you have will be stabilized. So there you have it. I hope this cheap lens review was of use to you, and stay tuned for more. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later.